Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. We have some exciting news coming out of the South Florida area today as Justin Scott has officially flipped his commitment from the Ohio State University to the Miami Hurricanes. And obviously huge news. Not only is he a great player, clearly, but he's probably that cornerstone piece that I think Miami was essentially trying to get to be their guy. I mean, you look at what they're doing in this 2024 class, it is a very heavy focus on that defensive line. Already three top 300 guys, according to 24/7, committed to that group. And adding Justin Scott is kind of that cornerstone piece. I mean, he's that guy who you look at how he plays and the athletic potential he has to be that like dominant game wrecker. He's that. And again, they build around that. I think that's clearly where Mario Cristobal wants to go. He wants big physical defensive lines. He wants big physical offensive lines that can run it. And this is kind of the steps I think they need to continue to make to get guys like Justin Scott into the program and be, I think, what Mario Cristobal wants to be. And before we get too deep into this episode, I wanted to thank everyone, especially the Miami fans. You guys have really been supporting since day one, and that really does mean the world. So again, if you guys enjoy the content, consider liking, subscribing, commenting, all that stuff. It really does help. It helps us a ton. And again, we can't thank you guys enough. But so getting into the player, I mean, I don't think there's much I can say, frankly, that'll mean anything in terms of, oh, this guy's a great player. It's like everybody knows he's a great player, has great potential at least, because you look at all the schools recruiting, and there's not a single big college football program in the country that's not recruiting him. You obviously see Ohio State very much in the mix, landing his commitment for a time. You know Bama's been hunting. You know Georgia's been having him on campus and visiting. You know Notre Dame and Michigan both really were making their pushes as well. So pretty much everyone in the country wanted him, and that's not by accident. I mean, these coaches know, they see this as the type of guy who, again, can be that force that you need to go be really competitive on the national stage. And just looking, he's got that athleticism, that build, that 6'4", 310 pounds, where he's huge, obviously naturally, but it's not like bad weight, if you will. I mean, like relatively lean for that size and very, very athletic and relatively polished, frankly, too, which I think you see a lot of defensive and offensive linemen who just kind of win and dominate by their size. And at the high school level, you can definitely do that. If you want to be that peak, great college football lineman, I think you need that polish, you need that skill. And again, you kind of see that with Justin Scott, or at least you see the potential to continue developing it because he's got that fluidity, that flexibility, that like raw athleticism that you're looking for, and he's got it in spades. And just getting into why I think he probably did end up going with Miami over Ohio State, I think, frankly, part of that is probably playing time, and I think he's going to be very much counted on to play early. You look at who might leave for Miami this year on the defensive line. You've already saw Jafari Harvey hit the portal. You're probably going to lose Leonard Taylor just because it's hard to convince a guy who might be a first-round pick to come back to school. I mean, if he does, that's obviously great, but he's probably gone. Branson Dean, I think, is losing his eligibility, so he'll be gone. And that kind of does put some, not pressure, but like, okay, we're going to need you to come in and play early. And that's probably a good thing. And I think he's looking around, like Ruben Bain comes into Miami, dominates as a true freshman. I mean, I'm looking at this guy telling my brother, I'm like, I think I don't see how this kid doesn't go like top 5. I mean, he's blowing through offensive tackles easily. He's got athleticism. I know whatever people say about his traits, he's not the tallest or longest, but I don't care. You look on the field, that guy is a dominant player. And no doubt looking at him kind of encourages Justin Scott, like, look, that's kind of what I want to be. I want to be able to play early. I want to be able to make an impact. And I think with Miami, you got a coach Cristobal who's very comfortable playing freshmen, and then because you've already seen it. And then for Justin Scott, you look a guy who's physically at least appears to be very ready to go. And not to mention the fact that I think you look at, like, looking at the proof is in the pudding kind of mentality for Miami. You saw how much better they got up front on both lines of scrimmage. And looking at a guy in Justin Scott, who I think wants to be developed into a first-round player, certainly has the capability if things work out for him, you can kind of look now. It's not like you're taking a flyer on Miami. You pretty much got to see a guy like Leonard Taylor make massive strides. I think you got to see some offensive linemen play at an extremely high level that I think a handful of them are NFL players as well. So I think this is the type of place I think guys are going to start looking at it as like, okay, I can come here, I can make a huge difference, and frankly, I can get developed into pros. Which, again, you look at when Miami is struggling, they really struggled to kind of put those high caliber NFL draft picks into the league, and it looks like that might be turning a little bit with the way Mario Cristobal is able to develop them. And just going through a little bit of this class so far, I mean, you guys like Lightfoot, another guy they kind of took from Ohio State and up north, that type of region. Another guy who will very, very much factor into kind of being that predominant guy in that defensive line, and what I think is a defensive line class that's looking like it might really shake out into something really, really great. I think you look at Artavius Jones too, another piece to add to a developing class that looks like it'll be really interesting to see how good these guys can play. Booker Pickett Jr., another guy. Elias Rudolph took him from Michigan. Very, very big get. Just looking at that list, you can tell they really put an emphasis on that. And that's huge. I think, again, what Miami wants to be under Cristobal is be a team that can play really physical, in addition to having that athleticism. I mean, you look guys like JoJo Trader and potentially a Jeremiah Smith, they're bringing in that high quality level of athlete as well. So I think he'll be able to maintain that skill and some of those things Miami's had for a little while now, but also you're going to be able to play big, physical, and tough on both lines of scrimmage. And I think that's kind of the recipe Miami's looking to do. And Justin Scott is obviously a huge part in that. And just to close out, I think you got to be super excited for Miami. Be very interesting to see how they close this class out. Maybe hit the portal a little bit. I'm sure they will. I don't know. You'd be crazy not to at this point in college football. But in my opinion, team's heading in the right direction. I think when you look at what their record finished out this year, they're a way better team than that. They just couldn't get enough consistency at that quarterback spot. So again, they kind of start to fix that. There was a lot of really good players. I thought the wide receivers were awesome. I thought the offensive line and defensive line were awesome. Probably got to continue to build some depth up through that corner spot, and obviously going to have to replace some safeties, but you saw the talent there. I think you saw some major development hit, frankly, from 22 to 23, and that's all you can really ask for in 2024. Should be a very exciting year.